Most people believe they know how to think. But if you look closely, many are living in a state of confusion without even realizing it. They work hard but do not understand why they still feel stuck. They keep making decisions only to regret them later. They move from one problem to another, yet their lives never truly change. Perhaps the reason people fail is not because they lack intelligence, but because they have never learned how to think clearly. A confused mind creates confused actions, and confused actions almost always lead to chaotic results. Meanwhile, the people who truly move forward in life often share one very interesting trait. They see things with remarkable clarity. They understand cause and effect. They know what works and what does not. And maybe the ability to think clearly is one of the most powerful skills a person can ever develop. Look around. There are people who remain trapped in the same problems for years, still procrastinating, still feeling lost, still repeating the same mistakes again and again. Not because they are not trying, but because they do not truly understand what is happening inside their own minds. Many people act based on temporary emotions instead of logical thinking. They make decisions while angry, afraid, or anxious, and then they call it a difficult life. But Marcus Aurelius believed that before a person can control their life, they must first learn to control their own thoughts. Because every action begins with a thought. If your thinking is unclear, your life will eventually become chaotic as well. But once you start seeing things more clearly, you begin to realize that many problems are actually far simpler than you once believed. One of the most interesting things about clear thinking is that it is often far less complicated than people imagine. In fact, the most powerful thoughts are usually very simple. For example, if I get enough sleep, I will have more energy. Or, if I constantly scroll through social media, I will lose focus. These are extremely clear statements. They help the brain see the connection between cause and effect. But most people live with vague thoughts like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe life is unfair. Maybe I'm going to fail. Thoughts like these cannot be tested. They cannot lead to action. They cannot be improved. Marcus Aurelius often wrote down his thoughts as a way to bring clarity to his mind. And perhaps that is one reason he became one of the calmest leaders in history. He understood that a logical mind creates a more stable life. When your thinking becomes clearer, your actions begin to become clearer as well. And the interesting thing is this: clear actions always create clear feedback. If you exercise consistently every day, you will eventually see your body change. If you study seriously, your skills will improve. If you constantly stay up late, your mental health will begin to decline. Life always responds to the way we live. But many people fail to notice this because their actions are too chaotic. They keep changing goals. They give up too quickly. They are not patient enough to see the results of their own efforts. And then they convince themselves that life never gave them a chance. But the truth is, a mature person is not simply someone who takes more action, but someone who can recognize the connection between actions and results. If you are also trying to understand yourself and build a stronger mindset, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to like the video to support the channel. What made Marcus Aurelius remarkable was not only the fact that he was a Roman emperor. It was that in the middle of war, disease, and the enormous pressure of power, he still took time to observe his own mind. In his book Meditations, he constantly wrote about emotions, fear, death, anger, and the way people react to life. He did not write for others to read. He wrote to understand himself more clearly. Perhaps Marcus understood something very important. When the mind is not observed, it becomes easy for negative emotions to take control. And that is still true today. Many modern people constantly feel overwhelmed because they have never truly sat down and looked at the thoughts running through their minds every single day. They consume endless amounts of information, but rarely stop to ask themselves, is this actually true? And sometimes, simply learning to pause for a few minutes and think more clearly can completely change the direction of your life. One of the greatest benefits of clear thinking is that it helps you recognize mistakes much faster. When a person thinks logically, they are not overly afraid of being wrong, because every mistake is simply another opportunity to understand the world more clearly. Meanwhile, people who think emotionally often try to protect their ego at all costs. They reject feedback, they blame circumstances, they continue repeating the same mistakes for years. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that human beings cannot control everything happening around them, but they can always control how they choose to see it. And perhaps that is the true foundation of calmness. When you think clearly, you stop overreacting to every problem. You begin to see challenges as information to learn from, rather than tragedies designed to destroy your life. Perhaps never before in history have human beings been surrounded by so much information at once. Every day, the brain is constantly pulled in different directions by short videos, news, notifications, and thousands of competing opinions. As a result, many people are slowly losing the ability to think deeply. They react too quickly to everything. They trust temporary emotions more than logic. And eventually, their minds become so overwhelmed that they no longer understand why they always feel mentally exhausted. Yet Marcus Aurelius lived in a world filled with war and instability and still tried to keep his mind clear. Perhaps that shows something important. Calmness has never come from living in a peaceful world, but from the ability to control the thoughts within yourself. A person with clear thinking does not allow the world to pull them in every direction so easily. Perhaps true freedom is not being able to do whatever you want, but no longer being controlled by the chaos inside your own mind. When you begin to think more clearly, you slowly start to understand what truly matters. You react less emotionally to small things. You see problems with a calmer and more rational perspective. And you begin to realize that much of the suffering in life actually comes from the way we interpret things inside our minds. Marcus Aurelius did not become a philosophical icon because he lived an easy life. He became remarkable because even in the middle of chaos, he was still able to maintain clarity within himself. And perhaps, in a world that grows louder and more distracting every day, the ability to think clearly is becoming one of the rarest forms of strength. If you enjoy topics about psychology, stoicism, and building a stronger mind, do not forget to follow the channel and join us for the next videos ahead.